In this part of Grundtvig's life, it is about him as an enlightener of the people, talking about the importance of a new way of having schools, teaching and education, talking about the importance of educating people who were grown ups and also leaving the kids to be educated without force and without that kind of manipulative force that can be or has until then been part of the teachings in general. Not many people went to school at that time before the 1800s. It was chosen kids who had this kind of education. Most others had to work and inherited their parents' way of life. So if you were like a farmer or just a worker, someone who's delivering goods or making shoes, so it went on to your kids, and maybe they didn't need to read and write all that much to do that job. They had to practice it and do it, and has the basis of what you need of calculating a few numbers so you can trade and make the things valuable enough. But otherwise, people did not really send their kids to school. But that started kicking in the 18 1815, maybe 1820, where the awareness of the importance of schools became part of the national interest. It became a policy the kings were interested in. That's part of the Enlightenment age that had really kicked that idea that it was a responsibility to send kids and people to school. And so he was tapping into that time of his, going back to the Enlightenment age and the philosophers of that. And he has been in England several times, where it was a hub for for people who had these kind of enlightened ideas. And so in Denmark, he could see the big difference between how situations were and how he was thinking. And one of the most famous poets, poems that he has been writing, is that of education for everyone, and learning should be for the human in general. And that's what he's saying in this in this very famous poem. Is the sunshine only for the black earth, and isn't enlightenment also the friend of the soil as well? And so he's saying that actually education and learning is very important for everyone and for life as a whole. So these are the two aspects that are going to show what he really want to talk about, and what I'm going to reflect on here in this chapter from the book of Anna's Horn, and just using it as a basis for a little talk on Grundtvig's ideas for schools. He had a great impact, also lasting impact, on how to run education and the ideas that came out as the people's high schools, especially. And it all started back when he wanted to see that the church should not have that kind of indoctrinating in the ordinary schools. He saw there should be three types of schools: the church school, the citizen school, and the school for those who are learned, like the university. The church school should be for theologians or people who are interested in that part of learning, so they can become priests or maybe understand a lot about religion and its topics. The other kind is to be part of the citizen school, and that should be for everyone. Uh, and it should be focused on the engagement of the persons who are in that school, not something that's put on them from the outside. They should be related, these topics in these type of citizen schools should be related to what they work with in daily life, so they can use it actively and have it as part of their progress and enlightenment. And he was also keen on having focus on the Danish language, history, mythology, and the upbringing of the spirit in the Danes. It was around that time where they had lost two wars and lost two big areas in Denmark in the south to the Germans, and the other nations were seeing themselves as the big and important nations farther to the south. And here stood this Danish historian who had encapsulated all that, the Danish priest who had the faith with him, the Danish romantic who had looked at history and the spirit of it and looked at the times that he was in. He wanted to revive that spirit in the Danes, that they had an important language, history, mythology, and they had a special story that we have talked about. But all that, to make it realizable, it should go through the schools. And that's why he wanted to focus on the education and had this idea for the king to build a high school in Sora, an academy of a kind, so they could get young people to study there. And he had a lot of thoughts on how that should unfold, basically saying, well, the school should be, first of all, for everyone. It's not just for the learned people. And already back in 1839, he had this very beautiful poem that's still read and sung until today. Lyset for de lærde blot. Is the light only for the enlightened ones or the learned ones? And he say, is it only their destiny in a way they could write and learn? No, under heaven and the heavens want the good for more. And light is the gift from above. And so the sun will shine with that farmer on his land, not with those people who are the learned ones. And it will tell us, the sun, who is really going about doing some good work. In another word, I'm rephrasing, but he's just, you can see from these things he's talking here, and he's really touching on an important issue, saying, well, what is this about education only for those who has the brains for it and who can learn Latin and all that kind of stuff that you need? And so most of the people will be pushed out of any kind of education. This is not how it should be. Is the sun on the heaven shining on everyone, or isn't it not? And does it have space for more people to get enlightened, like we get the heat and the light of the sun every day? And so he turns to that farmer on the land and the worker outside these universities. He say, well, light is for everyone, and maybe that farmer who has the sunlight out there is being more productive than these people who are sitting teaching us what to do and learning about a lot of things in the universities. And so he keeps on going in this poem that has been made as a song as well, and sometimes and many times is being sung in the people high schools, and people has been really cheering up by listening to this, because that made a big change in those times. We must remember he was still tapping in the time where things were changing in that direction, but he was really the voice that made people also understand they were valuable and they had to have access to education. And how to do that? Well, he wanted these enlightenment citizens and people that could really use enlightenment in their everyday work. It should not just be topics that was politically massed over the people's heads. He said even the kids should not be like that. He said, what does this help us? That we have our kids going to schools and then they get all sorts of learning and being taught a lot of issues, and they have to remember it and repeat it and show that they can it, but really they are not engaged in it. They don't like it. They don't know how to use it or what to use it for. So what will happen then? He say, well, after they finished, they will go and throw it all up again, because they don't need it. And this is a bad way of educating. In many ways, he's tapping into our times still, because it's still like this, and unfortunately. But not totally like this, well, but basically many kids will recognize this picture from their education places and the studies they are in, that a lot of things they have to swallow and get to, because time has to be filled out with a lot of stuff. You cannot just have spare time. That's like seen as dangerous, well, day to day. And I remember telling my daughter about this, and she said, oh, this is a cute old man, and she loved his words in this way he said it. He said it in a little more what can you say, rough way. Maybe I will find the quote. I guess I found it here. It's from his speech at the opening of the Marielust school in 1857, December 7. And he starts by saying, well, the interest is what makes the work happen. It's an old saying, and so he says that can be seen more clearly in the school. So, what is it when the schoolmasters are pulling the kids, saying they are learning nothing, and pulling them by the hair, and also giving fines to their parents for them not learning? And he says, it is with the school like with the church. If you get things by force in you, it won't be a lot of use. It will have more damage because the the person would not learn anything by it, and thereby will lose the knowledge that's behind it. And he say it is with that like with food and drink. If you put it in people by force, well, they will end up throwing it up as soon as possible. And that's beautiful, really beautiful. And he was really very clear on that. He wanted a school that was free of exams. He wanted a school that was driven by the interest of the persons who are receiving it, that is driven by certain elements that people are mature to learn about. It doesn't help to teach kids and about things they are not ready for, he says. It has to be something they are ready to do. We must also remember there has been a Jean-Jacques Rousseau in the century before him, so he's not really all that original in this case. But the good thing is that he has caught these waves and understood them and reflecting them in the Danish society as an authority. He's a priest, and he has his position. And after 1838, he became a figure that was also liked by the king and the queen, and he was also very known by people as that person who was somehow conservative in his views of religion and understanding of morals, but at the same time seeing that it's important to give people this freedom, uh, both to choose their religion, but also, as we will talk about later, when he's the politician, but also to make the schools run in a way that emphasize their importance as Danes, the language, the history, the mythology of who they are, to understand that, but also to be practical in that sense that people should feel engaged in it and feel as it is important. One other side he also wanted was that school should become kind of dialogue and exchange, as he say. That was his ideal, that it was something between the teacher and the student. It's not only one-way talk. In parentheses, we can see that, well, he has held many talks that was one way and that he was criticized for as well. But the idea itself is really modern at that time and important. And so several of his friends and students grasped this idea, especially one guy called Colt, and he goes trying to what can you say, implement these ideas in these type of schools that is working with the living word, the living history, the songs, the psalms, what interests people, and so the idea of the folk high schools are forming slowly, and this is what he said. He already really looked into that, and so Grundtvig, he could say that okay, the idea has to be born first, like with humans, before we can know what size of hat that is fit for its head. And so when I asked him how should we how should we manage this school and how should it be decorated in the interior, he said, well, let's let the idea be born first, and then we can see what kind of a hat that fits his head, like the human. You cannot choose everything ahead. So he wanted like to go along with that project of the school, and it became a success with time. Well, now Denmark and Scandinavia and the north is filled with high schools, people schools, and it has also an international impact, as I talked about in the very first introduction, that he had with these ideas also given a lasting impact on people who were in Denmark at some time or went to these high schools and could just sense the atmosphere in it, and in that way feel that people there were free, but came there by their own free will, wanting to discuss and talk and listen and sing and understand and enlighten themselves in many ways. They took that home, and to their own countries and made up um, ways to bring it into their local societies or open universities on the same idea, inspired by that Grundtvig idea, as they say, even in the East, in India, Bangladesh, and Vietnam, and Japan, and also Africa, Nigeria, and America, North America, not the least. So the idea of the schools and how it should be run, the way of changing the way of education, removing that forced education. He had even a radical idea at that time that, well, the Christianity, the faith, should not be taught at schools. It should be taught in the church, because the school should be for life. This is about educating the kids in what they need to know to live their lives. And when you go to church, you learn about the religion there. You should not have this forced education of kids in all kind of ideas and dogmas and Christian ideas that they will just throw up later because they find them irrelevant, or they don't want to terp all these Latin phrases and whatever they've been taught at that time. That was somehow, in my brave and radical idea, because he is still that conservative priest who is fighting for his faith, as we saw earlier, and wants to build a bridge to bring it into the bring it into the 19th century. And at the same time, he's saying, well, let the church get out of the schools and teach in the church, and let the students go there to receive their religious study. And we have to have these citizen schools where even the grown-ups can catch a bit of that light. That's not only for those educated people who had all the resources and abilities to go to universities, should be for everyone. Everyone should have access to that kind of enlightenment, understanding, but within the limits of what they need. It should not be something they will never use or not really interested in themselves. It should be their own abilities and what they are seeking that they can get. And so that creates already a project to say, how can I make a school or a high school, people's high school, that really fits this description, so people can come and in a way tap in to be part of it, feel the atmosphere, get enlightened, but feel that they got what they wanted out of it. They were there for a certain reason. And this has, held on up until today, even though we can say that these folk high schools are under pressure today because they are very expensive to run, and there has been the public schools who have changed in the way they educate and learn, even the universities. And so maybe it has become more widespread today. It's a common understanding among people that you need to go to places where you educate yourself or get a degree of some kind. But looking at it in another sense, I can see they will have a future again, a renewal, because what's going on in the universities world over and colleges world over is a kind of making people more stupid than enlightened. They will get a degree in this and that, very, very fine, even very high, good degrees. They will become a doctor or an engineer even, but they will be lacking the cultivation, the understanding of life. And there, these people high school can get their role again, because and become vital, because it's a place, and they are still vital. Many people with money and enough resources will be going there once a year or twice a year to listen to lectures, to sit together, eat and talk with these important people in society, politicians, whoever is attending. And they will have discussions and talks on topics. They will maybe be doing handcraft, learning how to paint, how to play music, whatever they need. This high school will provide. And that's the beauty of it. They will bring in what people who's coming there is needing. But the main focus, I think, in the future will be that kind of enlightenment, critical enlightenment and understanding of life, history, the now, the identity, who we are, who are the others, humanity. They are many times really lost in these big universities where people are like production value for these places. They need a lot of students, push them in, push them out, give them this degree and say that we finished so we can get more money for developing. So it becomes fabrics and it becomes factories in a way. And that's bad. And you see many people today with a lot of degrees but no education and no enlightenment and understanding of life as a whole. They have no awareness of a lot of things. and many people, even now I'm speaking about Grundtvig in Denmark, many people like was for many years ago, well, who is he really? Oh yeah, that's the guy who had this big white beard or something. The priest maybe saying that you should be human first and then Christian. Oh yeah, I know who he is, but you know nothing. And so the understanding of the world around us, because the world has become so big and a lot of information in it, it has shrunk in a way, but also became a jungle in another. And so these high schools could maybe redefine their role again, and should have it redefined also by the state, that can take care of giving them subsidies and help to be running, so that people can go there and get really enlightened on who they are, as citizens, as people, as global humans, as part of a culture. Because that's what will bring us on, bring the bridge to the new century, where we're going to fight the robots, or maybe use them for goods. And yeah, depends on what direction things will be going. And that will also be a kind of medicine against tyranny and against suppression, because an aware and enlightened people cannot be suppressed that easy, and cannot be cheated that easy as people who are a lot of degrees. Yeah, yeah, congratulations, you are doctor this and doctor that. But if you talk to this professor somewhere, or this educated man here and there, even the doctor, he doesn't even catch his own field. I can tell you that. He understands some of it, some of them, very expert in one thing, but he does not really understand what's going on behind the scenes in life. Cannot talk culture with you. Cannot sit and discuss a topic of another thing that he knows of. And you can say maybe that's because didn't have the time for it. I think it's because he was too fed up to become that single-minded person that he became, and not because there wasn't time for it. Plenty of time in these universities to do a lot of things, even in the evening and afternoons. But some, they go engage themselves, of course, in political activities and cultural insights, and go to lectures to listen on philosophy and religion and history and spiritual issues. But this is voluntarily, like some people do it, most don't. And so we have this big generation of educating people who are not really getting educated in enlightenment. And if we can compare this to his time, we can see the similarities, that at that time people really didn't know a lot. They were just ordinary workers who were bound to the land as workers, and the owners could do with them what they like. No education, no teaching, no nothing. And then came this idea of the schools, and Jean-Jacques Rousseau and the other Enlightenment professors, philosophers, who talked about this changes in society and the human rights. And it kicked in also in Denmark. And Grundtvig was quickly I think, to grasp it already in the 1830s, 20s, 30s. And so in the 40s and up after, in the 50s, 60s, he realized these ideas with several academies, and especially Marielust in North Zealand, where he held this speech about his view and vision for the school, and how it should be really, what can you say, formed in different ways, the ideals that should be behind it. But the first public, what can you say, yeah, folk high school was in Reading, in the southern part of Jutland, in 1844. And so today there's more than 70 of these public high schools in Denmark, and they are running, some better than others, and some with better both economy and approach than others. That's the usual thing about human activity. Some goes the wrong way. All right, this was like a talk about his ideas as an educator, the people's high schools, the schools, and how to get the kids out of the hands of these teachings and teachers and schools that, just like food, put a lot down their throats, so they will throw it up in the end. That something we do not want. We want the school for life and inner motivation and the lust in the work.